Hello everyone, it's me, Emma, the heavy metal lawyer, here today to talk a little bit about the tragedy that happened at the Astroworld Festival, where 8 concert goers have died, several are injured, including a 10-year-old boy who last I read was still in critical condition. Hopefully he recovers soon. A number of teenagers among the people who are dead, as well as the people who are injured. Very sad thing to have happened, and a very infuriating thing to have happened, because first off, this isn't the first time that this has happened in particular, which is quite shocking. And there were several incidents at the beginning of the festival which also should have, raised alarms to the concert promoters, to the concert organizers, to Travis Scott. But, one thing that I've been a little bit annoyed at, particularly in the metalhead community, is blaming this on a difference in genre or fan base or something along those lines. I have noticed that some of the older metalheads have been like, oh, guys, don't forget Woodstock 99. Not just Woodstock 99. There have been several similar concert tragedies. There is, of course, the show that Great White, the hard rock band, played, where over 100 people died when they were trapped in the nightclub that caught fire due to pyrotechnics. There was a dispute to the bitter end about whether or not those pyrotechnics were actually authorized to be used by the nightclub. But I'll be talking about that again in a second. And then there's also been a lot of focus on Travis Scott and how he both handled things in the present and then how he's been behaving now recently. Particularly, people blame him for not ending his set when he first noticed that bad things were happening. And then some people are saying, with a video he made of himself in black and white crying about it, that those are crocodile tears, that he's, not being genuine. To the first part, it just seems like people don't realize what it's like to perform on stage. When you're performing on stage, especially at a big festival like this, you have stage lights all directed at you. Especially if this is a hip-hop show, all of the lights are going to be on him as the MC, and he's not going to be able to see shit for the most part, except for really, really close to the stage. So a lot of the, it seemed like some of the worst things were happening in this particular stage right area. And I doubt that he could have seen a lot of that. He did see someone climb into a tree, and people are like, oh, he even pointed out that someone was climbing into a tree, but it's a show. People do crazy shit at shows. How was he supposed to know the person was climbing out of the tree out of necessity rather than, woo, go wild, Travis Scott? But, and then, of course, when he did start to notice that people were getting injured and things, injuries are parts of any sort of show that's, high contact, especially a metal show. When I was at Metal and Beer Fest recently, when Napalm Death started their set, someone immediately got hurt very badly. Literally right off the bat with the first song, and they had to carry the guy out. And they stopped, which, Travis Scott didn't, and, he should have, for sure. He should have stopped. And, if he had of, They might have been able to catch things sooner. The ambulance might have been able to get through more easily. And, so he certainly should be held accountable from that end. But at the end of the day, he's the performer. Like, his job there is to perform things. He's not there to control the safety of the show. At the end of the day, the concert management is the primary party responsible. They're the ones who can cut off the lights, cut off the music, and there were all of these purported concerns about, we don't want to start a riot among the 50,000 concert attendees. And I think that's just bullshit, covering their ass type stuff, and trying to, and it seems like, unfortunately, that they've been somewhat successful trying to steer blame towards the victims of what happened, to the fans and the attendees at the concert, when in reality what I really wanted to talk about in this video is the concert promoter, Live Nation, and their really torrid record of safety at concerts, why it's a serious concern. I want to address one of the major reasons that I think it happens, and why they've been able to get away with it, and what the next step should be, and how they actually could be held accountable. So first off, this is coming from the Houston Chronicle, which has been doing some very good reporting on the tragedy and also looking into Live Nation. Live Nation Entertainment and its subsidiary Live Nation Worldwide have been linked to at least 750 injuries and around 200 deaths at its events in 7 countries since 2006, according to a review of court records, occupational safety and health complaints, and news reports. That's OSHA. Some of you may be familiar with that governmental body. And then the article proceeds to go through the different individual cases, and of course a lot of them bear similarities. There's the 2010 Vancouver Olympics, where you had this other case of surging fans, and it caused a barricade to collapse. You have a Snoop Dogg concert with, again, surging fans. You have the terrorist attacks, which I don't really think those should be included, with the Ariana Grande, the Country Music Festival in Las Vegas, and what's it called? Eagles of Death Metal, I forget their name, in Paris. But then more importantly, you have things like the Indiana State Fair in 2011, where they continued with the fair, even though there were winds of over 60 miles an hour, and it caused the stage to collapse, killing 7 people and injuring 61. A concert staffer suffered brain damage when a forklift toppled the booth where he was working on Long Island in 2013. There was trampling at a 2018 concert in Central Park, which that one is really amazing, because having been to a number of concerts in Central Park, it's a very large park. There's a lot of space, and even at the crowded shows that I've been there, there's usually been a lot of space. So to have trampling in 2018 at Central Park just, in my opinion, shows a serious level of mismanagement and negligence. That's not a legal conclusion, by the way. That's just my personal opinion. I am not saying, not making any legal conclusions in this video. They've been cited for 10 OSHA violations between 2016 and 2019, and so on and so forth. And there's one thing that should probably be obvious to you already, which is these guys had 10 OSHA violations, and I think they were fined in every single case between 2016 and 2019. What has happened? What has changed? If anything, it seems that things have been getting worse. And I think that really reflects the serious limitations there are on OSHA as a governmental enforcement agency. OSHA really doesn't have a lot of power, and that's both in the sense of the laws that they're working under and what counts as safe working conditions in the United States. We really have some of the worst workplace safety laws out of the first world, and the enforcement mechanisms as well is that all OSHA is really able to do, they're a federal civil law enforcement agency, which basically means for most federal civil law enforcement agencies, all they can do is levy fines against people. And for Live Nation, the reason why they keep getting into these situations is the very same reason why these fines aren't working at preventing these situations from happening in the future, which is that it's profitable for them. It's profitable to have lax safety standards. That's always been the reason why corporations have failed at promoting safe work standards and safe consumer standards as well. And there's a very particular situation that I think is worth looking at, which is Live Nation's history as a quasi-monopoly entity. In the year 2010, the Department of Justice and a whole bunch of different states ranging from California to Texas, so it was very, bipartisan. They filed an investigation against Ticketmaster and Live Nation, which were merging out of concerns that they were becoming a monopoly. And the amended final judgment for this monopolistic merger came out in 2020, so 10 years later, and essentially it just shuffles the pieces around the board. And this is a huge problem with modern antitrust enforcement, is it's very focused on compromise. You don't have the kind of hard-nosed, hard-line trust-busting that you generally associate with the idea of antitrust, but really hasn't been around since like the late 19th century. And, with the exception of Microsoft, they were trying to make an example out of Microsoft. It hasn't worked, in my opinion. And, another big problem is that modern antitrust enforcement is really premised on very old ideas of monopoly and, more fundamentally, of corporate power. Our ideas of antitrust are based in very capitalistic ideas. The idea that if you maintain some level of free competition, that it will prevent serious abuses to consumers, to workers, to the general public, to other companies, and so on. And the problem is that there aren't a lot of classic monopolies anymore, and it's becoming more and more so that way as a lot of major corporations become very diverse in what they do. If you're looking at, a corporation like Amazon, for example. And this investigation against Ticketmaster and Live Nation was kind of one of the rare exceptions, because these companies do clearly fit into a niche of, concert promotion. But then you see the problem with the way this was dealt with in this final judgment, again from 2020. One of the things was that one of the companies that was involved in this deal that Ticketmaster owned and was part of the merger, called, not sure how to pronounce it, but Paciolan, was given to Comcast. That was essentially the solution for stopping monopoly, was to give it to another giant, bloated, far too powerful corporation. And so antitrust is, in the traditional sense, is not really super effective for dealing with corporate power today. And, that's why Live Nation gets away with this, is because you don't have a choice. I mean, if you don't use Live Nation, you're going to be using another major concert promoter agency. There's, outside of, some underground metal and punk shows, like some very few underground hip hop shows, you're not going to see a lot of small company concert promoters, let alone, sort of DIY or individual concert promoters. I mean, even today, I've got the Smear Campaign record from Napalm Death there in the background, which I picked up at Metal and Beer Fest. This is a festival of, extreme metal, and obviously Napalm Death is a very influential band, and they're pretty large and pretty well known at this point. But nevertheless, these are bands that back in like the 1980s, major corporations went in touch with a 6-foot pole. They'd at least put like one or two holding companies in between. And that's just not the case anymore. There's no longer those sort of social mores preventing large corporations from getting involved in underground music. And, this gets back to this whole idea of, oh, well, this is just a problem of hip-hop, or this is just a problem of mainstream music, mainstream celebrity culture. It's not. What Live Nation did at Astroworld, it's going to affect other concerts, too. This is coming to a concert near you. This style of concert management and promotion of just undercutting, just skimping on any investment so you can extract as much money as possible. All to do what? Not really to do anything other than sell tickets. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what these companies are really supposed to be doing. Charging exorbitant fees to do so, processing fees and so forth. This is only going to become worse unless the Department of Justice investigates them. And the Department of Justice shouldn't limit its investigation to the incident at Astroworld, but instead should look at things more broadly and think about creative charges and possibly, consent orders further down the line about how to prevent these practices more generally, rather than just, hold them accountable for what happened at Astroworld. Because again, this isn't going to go away, and it will become more common, It'll happen at lots of different kinds of shows, including metal shows. And the fact, even assuming that metal fans are like better than hip hop fans, which I think just questionable. But even assuming that was true, it's not going to matter. If you have an unsafe stage, if you have too crowded conditions, those audience members can be the nicest people in the world, and they can still have crowd surges, trampling, stage collapses. All of those things are still possible. This is a problem that needs to be addressed, and at this point, I think only the federal government and federal law enforcement has the capacity to take on a corporation as large as Live Nation and get them to change their practices. So yeah, that's it. If you like this video, it's a little bit different than my other ones, but make sure to subscribe. I talk mostly about music rather than the law, but I am a lawyer, so I did feel a need to talk a little bit about this, and I really hope that everyone who's currently in critical condition gets better, and that Live Nation is really looked into, because they shouldn't get away with this.